Thank you for those that have jumped in. Today, I don't know. I feel like when I'm not at home, I don't have a lot of time to set up, especially because I'm working, and also just like I don't have a lot of things. Okay, good. Getting positive feedback over here. I basically I don't have a lot of time to really prep, and just the whole technical stuff of it, kind of being on a mobile setup, it really affects how I work. The more touchy subjects, I want people to call in. I want to hear more from people, and not just do it like this. So that's why I kind of picked this random topic. Um, and hopefully we can go good from here. So the topic today, real quick, this is episode 5 of the show, The Emergence, uh, with your host, of course, Red Hawk. This topic for today is violence, and I wanted to go over violence because it's very important in our society. It's very important in our culture. It was very important in the past cultures, and I feel that it's something that is shunned or frowned upon or not spoken about in today's society. Even though it's very rampant, it's still part of human beings' psyche. It hasn't gone away, and therefore, I want to shed some light on it. Uh, Let me give a definition of violence. It is the behavior involving physical force intended to hurt, damage, or kill someone. That is violence. And it's funny because when you look these words up, they have a like a chart of when the word has been used, and its all-time low was in the 1920s, and it currently is at its highest right now. The word violence has been used significant in these more recent years, and I wonder why. So let's just break down. I have a few questions I wrote for myself to kind of guide, the show. Um, do we want to be violent? That's the first question I wrote. I think most people don't want to be violent. Doesn't mean that there's people that don't enjoy it. Obviously, we have professional fighters. We also have people who participate in amateur competition fighting, mixed martial arts such as jiu-jitsu, Muay Thai, judo, karate. I mean, you name it. And obviously, those are considered violent sports. Also, non not very direct sports that are aggressive and violent are things like football, rugby, hockey. Well, hockey actually has fighting in it, but yeah, fighting also, even in, I would say, basketball. There's been several fights that have came from basketball, um, especially with the fans and whatnot. So yeah, violence is definitely a big part of society, whether we think about it or not. That's the facts. Um, I don't think we want to be. I don't think we want to be violent, but I do think that the way the world presents stressful situations, sometimes we have either no other choice, or we are forced to respond, and the fight or flight response kicks in. One obviously being the fight response. Uh, I personally believe that we're um, animals to an extent, and being aggressive or violent or confrontational is definitely something that I feel is a part of our nature as humans. Um, so yeah, that's the one. That's pretty much what I think about violence. Uh, Now, I have more philosophy about violence, especially in today's modern society, but I think I'll get into that a little bit later because I kind of want to talk about why there's an urgency for violence at this moment, and also why it's frowned upon, or how it's frowned upon, and how people react to those kinds of things and situations. Uh, so, how does violence affect us? One of the things about violence that, or not just aggression and how people react to each other. If you ever got the Citizen app, I have it now, and it's pretty crazy. It gives you live news. It gives you live news of any crimes going on around you, or actually just activity. So it could be fire activity, police activity, violent situations. Um, I mean, just different things. But it's constantly going off. It alerts you when something happens around you, and you don't realize how much craziness is going on until you have that app, and then every few minutes or every hour, you get a hey, there was a stabbing, or there was a shooting, or a man with a knife has been reported, a man with a gun has been reported, uh, a domestic dispute has erupted on the streets, uh, officer involved shooting. I mean, the list goes on and on, and it's kind of crazy because this is an everyday thing that people don't really, I don't want to say know about, but I think we just kind of tend to shut ourselves off from the reality of the situation, that we're this little safe haven in our homes, which for the most part I think we are. For the most part, I think being home definitely puts us in a safer position. But sometimes those situations come knocking on our door, whether we like it or not, and sometimes it's unfortunate how things end. Some people, it comes to their door, and then that's literally their last day on earth. Other times, it's just traumatic to maybe the people involved, or the children involved, or whoever's involved. So yeah, it's kind of interesting to think about it that from that perspective of you know how much is around us at all times. And also just think of a bad day that you ever had. Think of a day that somebody maybe cut you off while you were driving, or somebody flipped you off, or somebody acted out of line at a store and you wanted to do something about it. You wanted to, like, oh, I should, like, this person doesn't shut up, or this person straight up disrespected me, or this person bumped into me, or whatever. And immediately, your mind, I mean, depending on the person, but your mind can go to violence. You might want to commit acts of violence, and it takes a certain mindset to talk yourself down out of it. Or just, there's also a fear aspect of it, where you're just like, oh, do I really want to do this? Is my outcome going to be what I think it's going to be? Because at the end of the day, when you engage in some act of fighting, or some sort of some um, some form of violence, there tends to be a winner and a loser. Not all the time, but a lot of times there can be, and at that point you could be a victim rather than a winner. I've been lucky enough to not be too much of a victim in my life, but I know there's people out there who are quite the opposite and have had bad experiences. They've been robbed, they've been beat up, they've been stabbed, they've been all these things, shot at, stuff like that, and it's pretty crazy just to even think about that. Yeah. So um, I do definitely think violence affects us, whether we agree with it or not. And I'm pretty sure we all have our own stories about it. I might go over some right now, just to share my own personal experiences. Um, is it useful, or does violence produce results? So the does violence produce results was actually asked on IG just a few minutes ago. Um, and short term, yeah. If it didn't produce results, the United States wouldn't be going to war. The United States wouldn't be bombing people if it didn't produce results. I think war in general would just not be a thing if it didn't produce results. And I think that's a big important aspect of this is everyday violence is being utilized to get things done, to get points across, to push political objectives. People participate in violent coups, and those are definitely things that create some way, shape, or form. Produces results. Uh, you could even look at World War II and just look how the world was divvied up, and how it affected even from then till now the history. A good example would be Palestine and the lack of Palestine now that it's been given to the uh, the Jewish people. You know, because there was a conflict, because there was violence that had been taking place, and there's clearly a victor during World War II. You know, they were they used that power, the winners of that battle, to um, to divvy up the land and also give that land to the Israelis. And now the Israeli occupy Palestine, very much like how the United States continues to occupy native land, in my opinion. So yeah, it's a very very useful thing. It's also a very oppressive thing. It's something that can definitely be used to create some kind of result in some way, shape, or form. And I think that's kind of a little bit of a segue into um, one of the things I want to talk about, which is state's involvement in violence. That's a big one for me because, you know, we're told as children, to not fight, and there's penalties for fighting. There's penalties for doing any kind of physical actions, even when you're defending yourself. Um, there might be two kids that fight because one was bullying the other, and they might both get suspended. There's no like right or wrong person in that scenario, and that's problematic because in the future it creates a lot of passive people, in my opinion. I think it creates a lot of it just creates this ideology of like we're not supposed to fight and all this stuff, and it's kind of cool to live your life like that, except the problem is that the world doesn't act like that. And I already said some examples previously that the world doesn't show us um, passiveness. A lot of times it goes straight to violence. It goes straight to fighting. It goes straight to war. It goes straight to a little battle between two forces. My earphones are crooked, or is it just my hair? um, so yeah, the the world doesn't react passively. So when we're taught to be passive, it can become problematic, and we could become victims very easily. Luckily, there is, obviously there's self defense things you can learn for self defense, and that kind of helps mitigate those situations a little bit better. But ultimately, there's some situations where you can't do anything about it, like especially when there's firearms involved and things like that. So yeah, in short, violence does produce results. So I wanted to kind of explain the state's involvement in violence. So as we know, in this modern age, um, people don't like to see it like this, but the state has a monopoly in violence, and it's a kind of a complicated way to look at it if you haven't ever thought about it from that perspective. But the state, and I'm going to repeat that again, the state has a monopoly in violence. A friend of mine told me that, and it's something that I live my life by. It's a short statement, but it's a very very true statement. And let me explain that statement. So anytime the state, that being the United States, your physical state, your county, your police, whenever they want some type of action done, they usually go through a process, a paper process, whether it's like being evicted or you're getting sued or uh, you have some kind of charges. Those are all things that are those are all done via paper or passive way of handling things. But what we don't think about is that all those things are um, they're enforced physically. If you don't pay your rent, what happens to you? Do they just tell you, oh, you need to pay your rent, and they give you a letter and that's it? No. What ends up happening is over a long period of time, they give you the paper in, which is you need to move out, you need to move out. They give time frames for you to leave, and once those time frames have all been depleted, they send the state in, and that's via the police. They'll send some sheriffs to your house, and they'll literally grab you physically and pull you out of that house. And that's one way that they do it. That's a form of violence that you cannot react to. You can't tell them I'm not leaving. They will go in there, break the doors down, and pull you out of there, and probably arrest you if you resist. The other thing is any type of crime being committed, the police have every right to hurt you physically, to have any right to hit you. And I mean, obviously, there's legal boundaries that they can't break for whatever reason, but ultimately they can if they need to. And there's no way, shape, or form you can retaliate, because if you do, there is jail time consequences, which obviously jail is also another form of violence. So I mean, even as something as simple as, like, let's just say they sick a dog on you while they're trying to arrest you. As much as it hurts, and you're trying to fight the dog, or you're trying to back away from the animal or whatnot, you can't do anything to that dog. Even though it's your natural instinct to react, you can't do anything to that dog. If you do, well, guess what? Now you get charged for assaulting an officer, and that just tacks on time to whatever it is they're already going to try and put you in jail for. So, and that's just simpler things, whenever, that's very, like, black and white. But whenever somebody's trying to, let's just say, break into your home, and you shoot them or you fight them, there's a good chance that the state's going to come down on you physically. Potentially, they could send officers, and now you're part of the mix. Now you're being dealt with by the police. And then you can even look at the bigger picture is, when we do protests and when we do actions, we're immediately we're met with violence. You look at Standing Rock. I'll bring up Standing Rock. For those of you that don't know what Standing Rock is, it was an occupation on the Standing Rock res, to prevent a pipeline from being built through indigenous land, also through waterways which feed the indigenous people. And there was a massive indigenous encampment that was there to attempt to stop the building of the pipeline, the Dakota Access Pipeline. It was one of the biggest gatherings of Indians, especially to defend something, in a very, very long time. And the elders there made it a big point to make sure that event was a peaceful one. And there were strict rules about not committing any type of violence when protesting that situation. And as you know, for those of you that do, and for those of you that don't, the state immediately reacted with violence. The state sent sheriffs from all over the place, not just Morton County, which is where they were at. They sent it. I mean, I've seen pictures of all the sheriff's departments that were involved, and they were like with honor. Oh, these are all the sheriffs that were in Dakota Access, or I'm sorry, these are all that were in Standing Rock. And I mean, it's like over 50. I want to say it's over 50. And not only did they just show up, but they showed up with uh, military grade, like they had an armory of military grade weaponry, vehicles, and aircraft. They came with Humvees, the ones that they're using in Iraq, the one that they use over there. Um, they came with they at one point they came with missile launchers, literally a missile launching vehicle. Why? I don't know. It's not like we're flying jets or anything of that nature, So they ended up doing that. They brought I forget what they're called, but they're called MRAPs. I could be wrong. They're big old, they're really big trucks, and they use them to transport um, just different things, heavy things, and they were using those to blockade us. They brought everything. They had non-lethal weapons and then they were using them incorrectly. One of them being rubber bullets, and that's something that you see even in the George Floyd riots that happened last year, where they're firing them directly at people's faces. They're firing them directly, or they're throwing flashbang grenades directly at protesters. One of the people there at Standing Rock had their arm almost blown off. I mean, literally, the grenade exploded near the arm, and you could see the bone. A huge chunk of it was a huge chunk of this person's arm was gone, and they were gonna amputate it, but they luckily saved the arm, from what I heard. Um, and that's the reality, and that's what I mean by the state has a monopoly on violence. Because that encampment could have easily turned violent. There was enough protesters there to fight, similar to Wounded Knee, where they had an actual physical gun shooting standoff with the police. And I'll talk about that in a bit. But there was enough people to fight, and there would have been a lot of casualties because, like I said, the sheriffs had brought military grade equipment there to use on these protesters. I mean, everything from assault rifles, AR rifles, to tanks, literal tanks, and helicopters, airplanes, snipers. They had in the hills, so kind of where you were at, it was a kind of a valley, and in the valley they had hills that were kind of around the outsides of them. Well, they had helicopters dropping off snipers, and they were putting them all around the camp. So if they choose to, they can shoot people from really long distances. And I mean, it got to the point where the UN even got involved, but they didn't do nothing. Um, Celebrities got involved, but they didn't do nothing. This is something, to me, that was an eye opener to the reality of the world we live in, the United States that we live in. This is why I say we're on occupied territory now. I do believe that the United States is an occupying force, and they have shown time and time again that it is the case. And if anybody's willing to do anything about it, they will use violent force and action. And they are the only ones allowed to do it. And they will meet you with the most extreme violence if they've deemed it necessary. I mean, to the point of breaking Geneva Convention rules and laws. So When I say that the state has a monopoly in violence, that's what I'm referring to. I'm referring to the use of any means necessary against the people, and denying them the ability to actually fight back. Obviously, if it got to that point, it would be considered probably revolution at that point, and it's not good. It's not a good thing. It's not a good look. Some people feel it's necessary. Some people feel that that's the next step, but I'm not going to talk about that. I don't want to incriminate anybody or myself for that matter. Uh, so yeah, I'm gonna segue into the George Floyd case. So, some of the things that happened in Standing Rock happened during the George Floyd situation. Um, when people were pissed off and they started rioting, the media immediately attacked the protesters that were conducting aggressive behavior, such as looting, breaking capital ideology, or I'm sorry, capitalistic buildings that represent capitalism. So if it was like a Starbucks or something, it was getting smashed. If it, that those were picked targets for a reason, and that was to show that we're over it. A lot of people said that the small businesses got involved, and they were really upset that all these people's small business got destroyed. But at the end of the day, we wouldn't be having riots if we didn't have a policing system that was inherently racist, that is extremely prejudiced to people of color, and extremely passive and privileged to people who are more on the Caucasian the Caucasian category, and you see it over and over again. Like it's so bad to a point where it's all over social media. You see mass murderers, mass shooters who've killed double-digit people in one little event get taken to Burger King or wherever the hell they get taken to they get treated with respect. They get treated. They're protected. They don't allow other people to attack them. I mean, they get treated like a human being should get treated when they're doing minor crimes, not mass shooting. When you're a mass shooter, that's when you should be smacked up. That's when you should be thrown to the ground. That's when you should be, knee to your head. In my opinion, I mean, you literally went to a place to kill people indiscriminately, because a lot of times because people are literally batshit crazy, or they have a racial reason, or they have um, their own personal reasons because they were bullied or whatnot, like Columbine. And we have a tendency to just like see that, and yeah, we get mad and we post, but like that's the problem. Is what is that going to do? It doesn't do anything. It's really easy to make posts. It's really easy to picket and protest, but I think people got really fed up when it came to George Floyd. People, it's kind of like the alley riots. We have a threshold. I think human beings have a threshold for committing acts of violence, and these thresholds keep getting met. And because of that, riots keep happening. And the media, what they try to do to mitigate that is blame it on outside forces. They always say, "Oh, it was Antifa, it was this, it was that." They never want to say it's just the people protesting, because they feel, well, they don't feel, they know that if they say that, oh, it's just people that are protesting, or it's fed up and tired, it can potentially cause more of that. So they try to say, oh, everybody's trying to peacefully protest, and a small groups of individuals are coming to disrupt this whole thing. When the reality of it is, no, it's that's not the case. The reality is these people who are rioting, who are protesting, are fucking fed up. They're fed up. Um, I'm fed up. I don't like seeing my people be murdered. because they got a traffic stop. You know, I also don't like seeing black people being murdered and Asian people being assaulted and murdered. And it's just there's so many people that are affected by this whole situation that it's gotten to this point where people are exploding and people are reacting, and it's crazy. It's crazy. It's a crazy world out there, and now, at this high peak, gun sales went through the roof. Um, Ammo sales went through the roof. I'm a gun owner, and going to try and buy ammo. The ammo has almost, I would say, almost tripled at this point. It's almost tripled in value, and the supply to demand is still not adequate. I haven't been recently, but I mean, for a bullet, for a specific type of ammo, you can buy it for, it was, I want to say it was like 15 cents a round. And the last time I had purchased it, if you wanted legit ammo, was almost $1 a round. So actually, it's not even tripled. It's significantly. I don't know what is that. It's like fucking. It's gone up like 8 times. So, um, people are aware of this violence. People are preparing for it because uh, it could happen at any moment. At this point, people are tired of this shit, and they're gonna react. And currently, and this is kind of why I wanted to bring this up too, is that right now George Floyd, not his case, but the man who murdered him, the fucking cop that put his knee on his head, is in trial at the moment. And if they don't convict this man, I'm pretty sure people are gonna go bananas. I'm pretty sure it's just gonna be a repeat of last year, if not worse. Yeah, Derek, was it Chauvin? Yeah, this if he doesn't get convicted, all hell's gonna break loose again, and it's bad. And on that same token, it's not just the people that are protesting, but actually the people who are around there, who people who believe in the state, who believe in this lie that the state is there to protect them all the time, are there trying to defend the police or defend their own property, and they have guns too. Look at I forget what the kid's name is. Well, anyways, the kid who he brought his AR to the protest and ended up killing two people, I believe, and injuring another person. I can't remember his name for the life of me right now. But I mean, that's the kind of stuff that happens when you go to these protests. So the violence is currently like really rampant, and it's gotten to this point where if you go to these protests, there's a good chance you might get caught in a shootout. You might get caught in guns ablazing, or you might get jacked up by the police. So as soon as those things happen, people were getting shot up by the police with pepper spray, tear gas, rubber bullets. A lot of people caught rubber bullets once again to their faces. What some of these cops were doing was, they're just aiming at people's heads, people's noggins, and hitting them with it. People have gone blind from it. Back to Standing Rock, there's a few people that got shot in the eye, and they're permanently blind in one of their eyes because of it. I met this Navajo dude who was his right eye is like now cocked to the side, or one of his eyes is cocked to the side, and it's because he took a rubber bullet to his head. I have another friend that took one to his eye, and he ended up getting cataracts because of it and went blind. So this stuff happens, and it's continuing to happen, and that's why it's really important that we're well aware and not living this fantasy that there is no violence and that the state is heavily involved in it. And that's just here what the stuff I was talking about. Let's not even talk about overseas and what we're doing over there. Bombing other countries, invading other countries, participating in funding other smaller groups to proxy war, another nation for our own personal gain. That those are the kinds of things that violence has always participated in. The United States is born on violence, and needless to say, what they've done to my people and other indigenous people. Um, let's see. I guess I could talk about positive violence. I do think there's a form of positive violence. Uh, in my personal experience, it can be very therapeutic. Obviously, if you've ever if you've ever participated in mixed martial arts or participating in any form of martial arts and play and spar with another person, usually a teammate, or even in a competition against a stranger, there's this feeling that you get, and not everybody likes it, but there's this feeling of aggression and adrenaline and a bunch of other things in that nature, that that gets released when you participate in these things. There's like a rush almost, and it kind of gives you this feeling of how simplistic human's nature is. It takes out the BS out. It does at that point in time. It doesn't matter, if you didn't pay your bills. It doesn't matter. Things that are normally stressors leave. They're gone for that little bit of time, and it's just you and that other person, and you guys are both trying to basically hurt each other. If it's your teammate, or at least a little bit hurt each other, not a lot. If it's an opponent, well then yeah, you're trying to hurt the other person, and there's something, like I said, therapeutic about that. So that's what I mean when I say it's positive. Uh, and then when you win too, or if you're boxing and you keep throwing shots and they're landing it, that there's this feeling of like, wow, I'm doing it, and I'm doing well. Uh, and as you get better and train and get better at those things, it becomes more and more rewarding, because you become so good that you're able to beat a lot of people. My striking game in Muay Thai is I'm not the greatest, obviously, but like with most common people, I'll probably mop them up a little bit, you know. And I love that feeling. I love that I know I can do it, and I'm not even in the greatest shape. I'm big, so I can only imagine if I was in full skinny, fighting shape, and to be able to take somebody out in a fight and not get tired and just be mopping them up. And that's just a feeling that's like it's so rewarding. Um, Also, it does solve problems. Kind of like going back to with the whole usefulness of it and results. It solved a lot of my problems. As a kid, and I see this in my daughter, and I really hope she doesn't have to go through this. But as a kid, I felt like other little kids would kind of, I don't want to say bully, because they didn't bully me, but what they did was they would mistreat me in some way, shape, or form. Whether it was like maybe I was playing with the ball and they would just take it from me, or just kids tend to punk each other. They're kind of ruthless. They don't have a filter, so excuse me. They don't have a filter, so they tend to do really like rude things to each other. And I remember as a child, I was very aware of those rude things, and I knew what they did was mean. I knew what they did was harmful and hurtful, and it made me feel bad. And I remember thinking to myself, like, feeling super helpless, like what can I do, and like you tell the yard duties or whatever, or teacher, after a while it gets kind of like, dude, like I'm gonna have to keep telling every time something happens. It becomes problematic. Or I've had things like sand thrown in my eyes, just really like asshole kid things that kids do to each other, and being on the receiving end of that, and it kind of sucks. And the very first violent action that I've ever participated in, and I remember it very well, I was at the park that I grew up next to. It's called Guardia Park, and I was sitting. No, I wasn't sitting. I was digging a hole And I was playing with some other little kid that I actually think it was a relative of my dad's friend. I think it was his nephew or something. And I was just playing in the sand, and he had a handful of sand, and he just threw it in my eyes. And I remember, like, obviously it hurt. You have sand grains in your eyes, so it hurts. And I'm crying. And by the way, I'm probably like, I don't know, 6 maybe. I don't know. I have no idea what the age is. So I go tell my dad because my eyes are on fire, and it hurts and whatnot. And my dad's reaction to that was, "What do you want me to do about it? Hit him back." And when he said hit him back, it was like an epiphany. I was like, "What? Hit him back? Yeah, hit him back." And that's what happened. So he started digging a hole, and he wasn't looking. And I remember walking up to him and just kicking him as hard as I could, like a front kick to his back. And this kid fell in the pit, the pit he dug, and he was like crying, and just feeling like yeah, like you threw sand in my eyes. Now you're crying. Like now you feel bad. Now you feel the feelings that you made me feel. And I mean, maybe it's unhealthy to feel that way, but there is some, like I said, it solves problems. There was another time that I could think of growing up as a kid. I got in trouble for fighting twice. I could have been suspended, but because I had good grades or whatnot, and I went to school in Alhambra, so they're a little more lenient. I got sent to Saturday school, but I remember the first one was this guy. His name was Mark, and we were about to play football. So all of us obviously were lining up on the fence to be pick teams and whatnot, as kids do. And I remember this dude ran, sprinted to the fence, and he jumped on it, and he literally knocked another kid over, and the kid fell on top of me. And I was just like, dude, like what the fuck? Well, why? Like, what is your problem? Why did you have to do that? Just it was rude. It was a real rude thing to do. He made that kid fall. That kid fell on me, so I got the end of that. And this dude was so okay. Let me give you some backstory behind that. So I guess there was a group of boys they would jokingly push each other, like what, they would go back and forth, push each other, and I guess that was like a funny thing for them to do. That's what I heard. That's what I remember. But when I was like, dude, what the fuck, and he dropped that kid on me, I guess he attempted to do that to me, but I wasn't his homie like that. So when he shoved me, I immediately went into fight mode. So I grabbed him. I remember grabbing him by his collar and just beating him with it, like just boom, 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 just hitting him until he hit the floor. And then that was it. He got up all dazed. Like, I mean, his face was all red from me punching him, and yeah. Needless to say, he wasn't gonna do that to me again. But what sucks about that is, and it kind of is also is a big thing to think about in the future, is that yeah, your violence is gonna potentially lead you to jail or other things. So when you decide to participate in violence, you have to be aware of that could potentially be a thing. And participating in sanctioned violence, such as MMA or some kind of sport, is probably the only safe space to be violent. That was one of the things my dad would say. He goes like, when you're on the football field, that's the one place that you can be violent and not go to jail. So take advantage. And yeah, needless to say, I did. I think a lot of us did. A lot of us knew that was the one place that we could get away with hitting each other, and there's no real repercussions. If anything, you're rewarded and encouraged to be more aggressive, more violent. Does it cause problems in the future? Yeah, probably. It probably causes a lot of issues, but that's the name of the game. So yeah, there's definitely positive violence. There's definitely. I wanted to talk about the Xochimilcas. I think that's what they're called, Xochimilcas, and I apologize if I butchered their name, but They're an indigenous Nahua tribe in Mexico, and they participate and they call it the Flower War, or also known as Xochitl. Sochi Yayot. Probably butchered that too, but it's called the Flower War. And in the Flower War, what they do is when they have grievances that they've developed throughout the year, they beat the shit out of each other to solve those grievances. And it's a communal thing, and everybody participates in it. Men, women, and children, I believe, all participate in it. And it's, in my opinion, a great way to solve problems. I mean, like for instance, if you and your neighbor fight over, let's just say, a parking space, imagine, rather than just arguing about it or talking shit to each other or popping each other's tires or doing stupid shit like that, you, at the end of the year, you fight over that parking space. And then once you duke it out, I won. All right, I guess you got the parking space. The problem with that though is that there's a power imbalance where, uh, obviously, if you have if you're more trained, or you're just physically better, you're gonna win. But I don't think the flower war is really for resolving issues. I think it's more for just, oh, like you two have an issue, like a physical beef, or you guys don't like each other, like fight it out, and you just duke it out. Um, I also grew up in the whole, punk and gig scene. So earphones are, there you go. The punk and gig scene, punk metal, all that stuff. In that scene, you participate in pitting, and in pitting, it's aggression. It's a form of aggression. It's a form of violence. The whole point of it is to, one, feel the music. So when you listen to faster music, you're running in there, at the pace of the music, and then you ram into each other, and you hit each other. And it's kind of cool because I remember going to those things, and it feeling very, like, almost addicting, because um, you know as a kid, just any kid, when you go through life, you have stressful situations. A lot of times parents could do something to you that's going to make you stressed out. Whether they're right or not is irrelevant. The point is that you're stressed out about it. And you know rather than acting out, or doing stupid shit, you go to a gig and you take this aggression out, this pent up violence that you had, and you take it out on somebody else. I mean, obviously not with the malice of trying to hurt them, but definitely, like, just with the feeling of wanting to release and getting it out of your system. And I remember going to gigs, and jumping in the pit, and like, just, yeah, just those few seconds or a minute or whatever, however long the song is, and getting out and just feeling this, like, like, I got it out of me. Like, I got that aggression out of me. I got that violence out of me. I feel better. And I think a lot of kids who are in the punk rock scene, and the metal scene, and psychobilly, well, just pretty much the alternative music scene, when they do those things like that, it's like a form of stress release, and it's pretty cool. And actually, that that what that ended up doing was creating a definite, kind of a policing role that I would take at shows, because I knew how sacred of that place is when you're in that pit, when you're there, that it can be ruined by people. And when I say ruined, I mean, like, people physically punching other people in the face, or people using weapons, or things like that. So no longer is it a safe haven and a place to release stress. It's now a place of fear. It's a place where you now have excluded, like, a bunch of people. You know, let's just say this dude's hitting people. Obviously, girls are probably going to be more scared to go inside. They don't want to be hit, or vice versa. Or some dudes, some younger kids are like, damn, I can't go in there now. This big dude is fucking literally throwing people on the floor, like grabbing them and throwing them on the floor. I can't even go in there. I can't enjoy myself. So me being the bigger guy and also, in my opinion, more experienced with fighting and whatnot, I would be that person to like try and let that person know, dude, like you need to fucking stop. And there's ways to do that, like if the dude's being too violent and he's hurting people, you go in there and you hit him as hard as you can and be like this is what you're doing to people. And two things happens. One, they get the hint, which hopefully is the case because then everybody goes back to enjoying themselves. Or two, they take it as a hey, you want to fight with me, and it would turn into a fight. And I think the last time we were discussing, I think I was discussing music that got brought up, the actual fighting, um, and I told one story of that, and yeah, and that's what happened. So like, let me just I'll tell you another story. So like, there's another time where we were in my neck of the woods, El Sereno, and there was a gig, and there was a few of us there, and I remember everything was pretty cool. Actually, a lot of my friends that I knew were there, and everything was awesome. But this one dude, his name's Jesse. He's a fucking low life. Like you see him now walking around Australia always drunk or whatnot. He's pretty much a bum now at this point. This dude, um, he did this thing where people do in the pit where they like literally grab their arm and they wrap it around your head, and they kind of like do like a combo like double pit. But and you can do it, but the problem is that if you're not willing to participate in it, then you kind of just like, nah, dude, I'm good. And that's what I did. He wrapped his arms around me, but he was really drunk, and I didn't want to fall because he was very imbalanced because he was intoxicated. And I remember like pulling his arm off of me, and so I thought it was over. I thought he would have got the hint, but instead, what he did is he came back again, and he then turned that little like friendly grab into a headlock, where he literally had my head like that, like trapped in his arm, and I couldn't get my head out at that point. And then he went drunk limp, and then just literally he ended up judo tossing me on accident. Well, not an accident, but unintentionally tossing me on the side. And I remember hitting the floor, and that shit immediately got me mad because it's like, dude, you right, you broken. I've already told you like I didn't want to participate, and now you're forcing me to, and you dropped me on the floor. So I remember getting up on my knee and just started immediately punching this dude because he violated the guidelines in the pit, and that dude had all his friends there, so it turned into a big ass brawl. I mean, we're fighting. There's only I think three of us, and we're fighting. Yeah, like at least six guys, maybe more. And we're getting down. We're fighting. We're just beating people's asses. The people that I had were definitely fighters, and the people that were there weren't. So yeah, shit got crazy. The whole gig turned on us. They thought we were the aggressor, but the reality of it was like, dude, he fucked up. So we left. Um, but yeah, that's kind of how that stuff turns from positive to negative. But it's, at the end of the day, it's all fun. I think it's all fun. Let's see. Trying to see if I read everything. Okay, one thing I said, the question is, or what I wrote down, does it have a place in our future? So I do think that there's a place in it in our future, only because human beings are aggressive and violent, not because we like really want to participate in it or thrive in it, but I do just think human beings will never not be violent. I think human beings are prone to violence no matter who you are. And because of that, it will always be in our future, in my opinion. Maybe we're going to get to a time or place where there's no need for violence, or it just is no longer in our nature. But in my opinion, we haven't evolved that far to not have violence in us in some way, shape, or form. And for all you native purists that think that or we were passive, we were not passive. We would go to war with each other constantly. Um, my people in particular would have to fight the Navajo, the Apache, and the Comanche because they would raid our villages to take our goods because they were nomadic and we were farmers. And needless to say, it got pretty violent. So, yes, I do think that there is definitely a place for violence in the future. Not to mention that we glorify it using things like UFC, football, NFL. There's so many outlets for violence that it's just like it's ingrained in our culture. It's never gonna not be a thing, and that's even like, and that's through the world. It's not even like, oh, the Americans are more violent. No, it's like, you have like left way boxing, which is just it's crazy. Then you have, obviously Muay Thai is from Thailand, and then you have Jiu Jitsu from Japan and Brazil now. I mean, all around the world, you have people who practice the art of war. That being, violence. All right, well, we're about to hit an hour, so on that note, I think I would like to end there. Thank you all for who tuned in. I know it was a really short notice kind of thing. I didn't think it was gonna actually tolerate this, and I have no idea how the quality is. I hope it's good. So far, I've seen people say it's okay. Yeah. This on Thursday, I'm actually going home. If I have enough juice in me, I might start prepping for that show, and then we could do it live, and I could actually take phone calls and all that stuff. Um, the other thing I might maybe do is maybe do them on Fridays, because I feel like, well, I don't know, maybe not, because I do like to do stuff on my days off. So I don't know. We'll see. We'll see. Just thank you all once again. Obviously, if you didn't catch this live, or you did catch it live, and people who wanted to watch it or didn't, or you want to show it to people, I do post these on YouTube. Episode 2, 3, and 4 are on YouTube right now. I will post this one on YouTube as well. It just takes a little bit of time because I have to edit it, and not really edit it, but like I have to convert it and then upload it. It takes a while, especially on this hotel internet. It's really slow. So just give me some time, and yeah, thank you guys. Appreciate it. Also on YouTube and stuff, like and subscribe, all that stuff. It really helps me out. Also get if you haven't followed this Twitch page, follow it, because I need a certain amount of followers so I can be a, I forget what the word is again, affiliate. And yeah, thank you all. Tune in a few days. Bye.